So next thing I knew, I was in a mansion. Mom and Dad had bought a farmhouse, a two-story in Ohio and Indiana, um, right on the Ohio-Indiana border, and it was huge. The yard was enormous. I had plenty of space to play. It was a two-story. I had my own room. It was just such a fantastic thing coming from the trailer that Mom and I had been in for the longest time, with two or three other people living in it in a cramped area. This was a huge improvement. And so I had a lot of memories in that house, swallowing a dime, pushing my brother off a bed into a dresser. um, and that basement was freaky. I always had nightmares about that basement where a witch was crawling up the stairs trying to get me, and I'd slam the door in her face. It woke me up many a nights. But yeah, backstory on that actually, and how all that came to be. So my mom was 16, met a guy, young man, who was kind of a spoiled brat at the time. His dad, my papa, did well in the coal mining industry back in the 60s or 70s, and he had all the money he could stand, and 100 or 200 horses, horse farm. My biological father, Denny, had a sports car. Anytime he wanted, he'd wreck one and get a new one. So they had plenty of money, and Denny was up in Ohio to visit with family over the summer, and him and Mom met, and they hit it off and had a good run at it. But I think eventually he found a Matchbox case with a phone number on her dresser, and he kind of hightailed out of there, which it is what it is. But after that, my mom met a young man in the nearby city, and they got along really well and started dating, and that's who I would eventually come to know as my dad. He was there for my birth. He signed my birth certificate, and him and her started playing their life together. My brother, Cole, was born right after they had started their relationship. Cole's a few years younger than I am. And then, of course, the next move is to get a house, and they bought that house in the country. So one of the moments that sticks out to me the most was one morning when Dad was taking me into preschool. So I'm sitting on the floor, I'm watching Scooby-Doo on the floor console, and I got my bowl of Fruit Loops and then I'm eating. And all of a sudden, it's kind of urgent. I'm sitting there watching TV, and Mom's in the background going, "You got to finish your cereal. You've got to finish your cereal." I'm like, okay, I get scared, and I eat my bowl of cereal real quick as I can, and get my coat on and head out the door. So we get in Dad's truck. He pulls out the driveway, and he's going down the narrow country road there. Especially in Ohio roads, I've always seen very, very thin compared to the rest of the country. Like, out in the West Coast, those roads are a lot bigger. But at any rate, this was a country unpaved gravel road back then. This was years ago, and off to both sides is a ditch. It's not a huge ditch, but it's enough to stop the water from flowing over the road from the cornfields, and kind of filters it down to an area that it can run off or what have you. Not uncommon on country roads. And so anyway, it's a beautiful day. The sun was out, a clear sky. I didn't have a coat on, and it felt great. The windows were down, and I'm sitting there riding along, looking out the window at the cornfield and seeing if I can see any deer or maybe even a coyote, and looking down in the ditch for any groundhogs that might be jumping around or playing. And there's a couple foot of water in the ditch. It must have rained the night before or what have you. But yeah, just riding along, and I feel the truck go off the road a bit, and kind of over the medium there, and I didn't think nothing of it. That wasn't uncommon, especially when cars would pass. You kind of go off the road a little bit, trying to make room for the other car. And so I just kept looking out the window. Next thing I know, I'm underwater, and it's cold, and I'm looking at tall grass, and it's murky and dirty, and I rise up, just 'cause that's a natural thing to do. And I catch my breath, and I'm looking around, and there's the side of the truck. And I look up, and Dad is over the driver's side window in it. Truck's on its side. He's in the window saying, "Take my hand." And I reach up, and I grab his hand, and he pulls me up through the window. Anyway, he sets me on the ground and asks me, "Are you okay?" And I don't know what's going on at this point. I say, "Yeah, I mean, I didn't feel like I was in any pain or anything." He's like, "All right, come on, let's walk home." And at that point, I was soaked. And what was what was before a nice day was freezing. So that was a cold walk of shame home. Uh, and we walked fast for sure. But at any rate, he'd been driving along and was reaching for his cigarettes. They were in the, they had fell to the floor, and he was trying to reach down to get them, and then he swerved off the road. So, yeah.